If you spend, like, any time at all looking into sci-fi military lore, there's this one image that inevitably pops up on your feed.
Oh, yeah.
It's basically the ultimate internet-famous archetype of just a grim, relentless soldier.
The poster boys of it, really.
Right. So picture an army of completely faceless troops. They are marching through thick radioactive mud in these World War I style double-breasted greatcoats. They got the heavy slope Stahlhelm helmets, and the circular unblinking lenses of their gas masks are just staring dead ahead.
And you can't forget the weapons.
Exactly. They are armed with entrenching tools, literally just shovels.
Just standard issue shovels.
Yeah. And according to the memes, anyway, they seem absolutely cheerfully eager to charge headfirst into a machine gun nest and just die for the Emperor. I'm talking, of course, about the Death Korp of Krieg.
They are, without a doubt, the undisputed poster boys of sci-fi clinical depression.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I mean, on the surface, the internet portrays them as these fearless, suicidal shovel enthusiasts who treat a tactical retreat like it's a personal heresy.
Right.
It's this very distinct, intensely dark aesthetic that draws a lot of people into the lore.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because what if their legendary lack of fear isn't actually bravery at all?
What do you mean?
Well, when you really think about it, the very concept of courage implies that you have something to lose, right? Like a life you value and you choose to push forward anyway.
Okay, yeah.
What if the Death Korps are operating on a completely different, much darker wavelength?
That completely shifts how you view them, honestly, because then you stop seeing them as action heroes or internet memes, and you start seeing the product of a deeply broken society.
Exactly.
A culture where human life has been, systematically devalued to absolute zero.
Which brings us to our mission for you listening today. We are going to look past those internet memes. We're using the lore specifically, diving into the novels of Steve Lyons, to analyze the dark mental conditioning, the deep-seated trauma, and the horrifying military efficiency of a society that has completely, fundamentally forgotten how to value human life.
And to understand why these soldiers lack fear, we first have to explore the apocalyptic history that shattered their society's psychology in the first place.
You really can't skip the history here.
No, you simply cannot understand the mindset of a Krieg soldier without understanding the horrific history of their planet.
Right, so to wrap our heads around how society gets to that point, we have to rewind like 5,000 years.
A long time.
Yeah. And Krieg wasn't always this radioactive mud pit either. It was actually a thriving, incredibly wealthy hive world.
Oh,
a massive trading hub, teeming with billions of people. But, as often happens with immense wealth, it bred complacency. And that complacency led to the planetary governor, autarch Herith von Maxising, deciding that paying taxes to a distant imperium was a sucker's game.
He basically said, we're keeping it all.
Yeah, he rebelled and declared Krieg an independent state.
And the terrifying part is that practically the entire planet fell in line with him. The population just accepted it.
Just went right along with the treason.
Except for one single stubborn city, the Hive of Farograd.
Ah, yes.
It was commanded by a loyalist named Colonel Jurten. And Jurten was completely surrounded. I mean, he didn't have the troops, the planetary defense lasers, or the resources to win a conventional war against an entire rebel planet.
So Jurten makes a decision that is just, it's staggering in its ruthlessness.
It really is.
And the timing of it is what makes it so incredibly dark. On the day of the Emperor's Ascension Feast, which is, a holy day meant to celebrate the divine salvation of humanity, rather than surrender, Jurten chooses to purge the rebel forces by launching a massive, planet-wide nuclear strike.
Just presses the button.
Let's sink in for a second. The loyalist was the one who nuked the planet. In an instant, Krieg was transformed into a boiling radioactive wasteland. The oceans literally boiled away into toxic vapor.
Wow.
Millions, maybe billions, died in seconds.
But the war didn't end with the bombs. That's the crazy part. The survivors on both sides, the loyalists and the rebels, they retreated into these deep subterranean vaults beneath the radioactive crust.
Just buried themselves.
Yeah, and what followed was a 500-year civil war fought entirely underground.
5 centuries.
Think about the scale of that time frame for a second. 5 centuries. We are talking about generations of people born into brutal, claustrophobic trench warfare in the pitch dark. Breathing toxic, recycled air, surrounded by mud, blood, and radiation.
Just 500 years of fighting in a basement where the ceiling is literally dripping poison.
Exactly.
By the time the Loyalists finally won, Krieg was just a dead world. But that 500-year nightmare birthed something entirely new. A fanatical belief system took hold among the survivors, which became known as the cult of sacrifice.
Right.
Because of what von Maxigizing did, Kriegers are conditioned from birth to believe that their ancestors' rebellion was an unforgivable sin against the Imperium.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the psychological bedrock of the Death Korps. Kriegers don't fear death because they are taught from their very first breath that their individual lives have no inherent value.
Nothing at all.
Right. Their existence isn't a gift, it's a debt. Their lives are merely currency meant to pay off a planetary spiritual debt that they inherited from an ancestor they never even met.
It's like being born into a massive generational mortgage.
That's a great way to put it.
Except the bank doesn't want your money, and they definitely don't care about your credit score. The bank only accepts your life as payment.
Wow, yeah.
Every single Krieg soldier sent to die in the Imperium's wars is just a tiny decimal point ticked off that massive eternal ledger. You pay the interest in blood, and the principal never actually goes down.
That is the perfect way to frame it. It is an economy of flesh. And now that we understand the societal debt they are paying, we really need to zoom in.
Yeah.
We need to look at what it is actually like inside the head of a soldier raised in this brutal transactional system.
And this is where we really have to highlight the author Steve Lyons.
Absolutely.
His novels, specifically Krieg and Dead Men Walking, are essential for this deep dive. Because what Lyons does so brilliantly is he demythologizes the Death Korps.
He really does.
He forces us to look past the cool trench coats and the shovel memes and look at the actual terrified human beings underneath those masks.
Yeah, Lyons strips away the legend and shows you the factory line, and I mean that almost literally. Their training is entirely anonymous. They are raised in subterranean breeze programs, which strips away traditional family structures immediately. You don't have a mother or a father to comfort you.
None of that.
Then, as children, they are subjected to rigorous sensory deprivation and endless lethal combat simulations.
Let's pause on that sensory deprivation for a moment, because I feel like that's not just a throwaway detail.
Oh, definitely not.
If you deprive a developing brain of touch, of varied sights, of affection, you are actively preventing a sense of self from forming. You are manufacturing a blank slate.
Which is exactly the intent of the Krieg commanders. They need to ensure that the individual never develops because individuality leads to self-preservation.
And self-preservation is bad for business.
Exactly. It leads to hesitation on the battlefield.
Which naturally leads to their absolute anonymity. Look at other Imperial Guard regiments, like the Acadians, for example.
Right, Acadian.
Acadians have immense pride. They have the purple eyes, they have a rich history, they have names, heroes, and vibrant unit colors. They stand for humanity's defense. But Kriegers, they don't even use names. They use numbers. A soldier is just 76 or 249.
That contrast is vital to understanding their place in the universe. When normal, terrified Imperial Guardsmen or even regular civilian populations interact with Kriegers, they don't see heroic saviors.
No.
Acadian looks at a Krieger and is fundamentally disturbed. They view the Kriegers as terrifying, cold machines who seem to have had their humanity surgically removed.
Yeah, they're creepy.
They are profoundly unsettling to normal humans because they reflect a complete absence of hope.
And so much of that alienation really comes down to the mask itself. To a Krieger, the gas mask is their face.
Exactly.
Removing it reveals an individual with unique features, unique expressions. And in the cult of sacrifice, individuals are weak, they are sinful, and they are destined to fail. The collective is everything.
The mask enforces that collective identity perfectly. It literally erases the self, replacing a human face with a uniform, manufactured visage that is identical to the millions of others standing right next to them.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want to push back on this popular internet idea that Kriegers are just these mindless, suicidal maniacs throwing themselves at bullets for fun.
Oh, they definitely aren't doing it for fun.
Right. Because if their life is currency, dying uselessly in a ditch because of a stupid tactical error is considered a complete waste of that currency.
Right, you're wasting the Emperor's money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't just want to die. They want their deaths to count. They need a return on their investment. So I have to ask, how does this calculated, highly managed trauma isolate them from normal human interaction? Like, they must be completely, utterly alienated from the rest of the galaxy.
Well, that alienation is the tragic core of Steve Lyons' portrayal. Underneath that mask isn't an unfeeling monster or some mindless robot.
Right.
It is a deeply traumatized human being struggling with their own conditioning. They are trying to find some sort of meaning and absolution in a galaxy that has systematically stripped them of everything else.
Everything. Their name, their face, their home.
Their future. Yeah, they're fundamentally isolated because they cannot relate to a universe that values survival when their entire existence is predicated on being a disposable asset.
It makes them incredibly tragic figures.
Yeah.
But it also makes them a terrifying military asset. Which brings us to the grand stage.
Here we go.
So you have this soldier who fundamentally believes their only value is to die, and who has been stripped of any psychological barrier to doing so.
Perfect for the Imperium.
Right. If you're an Imperial commander with a target that is considered mathematically impossible to take, that soldier isn't just useful. They are the only tool for the job.
You get the ultimate meat grinder. You get the Siege of Rax.
Let's set the scene for you at Vrax Prime. Vrax was a Departmentum Munitorum armory world, basically a planet-sized military warehouse.
Just stockpiles on stockpiles.
Heavily fortified, packed to the brim with weapons, defensive lasers, and massive underground bunkers. And it gets taken over by a rogue cardinal named Zephan, who leads a massive planetary rebellion, fortifying the entire world against the Imperium.
And the Imperium needs those weapons back, obviously.
Badly.
But they know taking a fortress world like that is going to be an absolute bloodbath. Normal soldiers would break. They would mutiny in a week.
Yeah.
So who do they send? They deploy the 88th Siege Army, which is made up almost entirely of Death Korp of Krieg regiments.
Because they are the supreme siege specialists. They use endless batteries of heavy artillery. They dig impossibly complex trench networks, and they wage these terrifying, silent underground mine wars to blow up enemy bunkers from below.
They're built for it.
But the cost, the contrast between their effectiveness and their catastrophic losses is just mind-blowing. In the opening phases, just to assault the outer defense line known as the Van Meersland Wastes, they lose 500,000 men.
It's absurd.
500,000 dead in the first 2 days.
500,000 casualties in 48 hours. And the Kriegers simply do not care. They don't pause to mourn. They don't reconsider their strategy. They just keep digging. They keep marching. And this siege doesn't end quickly either. It becomes a 17-year war of attrition.
17 years of grinding through the mud. And it escalates into pure nightmare territory, right? Like, it's not just local human rebels anymore. The Alpha Legion shows up.
Oh, yeah. Chaos Space Marines.
Now, the Alpha Legion is known for chaos, deception, and psychological warfare tactics that just completely bounce off the Kriegers because, well, you can't psychologically manipulate a blank slate.
Exactly.
Then, blood-crazed corn berserkers drop in. You have massive, building-sized Titan mechs fighting duels across these radioactive mud plains.
Yeah.
And maybe worst of all, the Death Guard-played Marines arrive.
The introduction of the Death Guard is where the psychological horror really peaks for the Kriegers.
Because the Death Guard unleashes a chemical weapon called TP3. And this stuff is so horrific that it actually melts right through the Kriegers' famous gas masks.
And we have to look at the mechanism of why that is so devastating to them. The TP3 doesn't just kill them, it degrades the one piece of equipment that defines their entire identity.
Their fate.
Exactly. When that rubber melts and the lenses crack, their bare faces are exposed to the toxic air. They are dying not as an anonymous perfected unit, but as exposed, flawed individuals.
Yes.
It forces them to face the ultimate shame in their culture right in their final moments.
They are robbed of even a nameless death.
Ow.
It's absolutely brutal, which, leads to the end of the siege, and I really have to question the logic of the Imperium here.
Yeah.
The war takes 17 years. 14 million Krieg guardsmen die.
14 million?
Let's go back to our mortgage analogy from earlier. The Imperium essentially foreclosed on 14 million of those generational mortgages in a single campaign.
Yep.
And when you look at the prize, the armories they came to secure are completely empty, all the weapons used up in the fighting.
Nothing left.
The planet itself is completely ruined, and because of the massive demonic incursions during the final stages, the Inquisition steps in and places the entire world under permanent quarantine. No one can ever set foot there again.
It's totally sealed off.
So if these soldiers are supposed to be such brilliant, perfectly conditioned siege specialists, how is losing 14 million men for an empty, quarantined rock considered a strategic success?
What's fascinating here is that the Siege of Rax perfectly encapsulates the grim, dark absurdity of this entire setting.
It really does.
In any rational military structure, losing 14 million troops for an unusable, corrupted wasteland would be a catastrophic failure. Heads would roll.
Oh, for sure.
But the Imperium operates on a scale of unimaginable bloat and cruelty. They love the Death Korp precisely because High Command can throw them into an absolute meat grinder like Rax, and the Kriegers will never complain.
Never.
They will never mutiny, and they certainly won't ask for a pay raise or a pension.
Huh, right.
The Imperium won because the spreadsheet says the rebellion was stopped and the territory is no longer in enemy hands. The human cost is completely irrelevant to the administrators on Terra.
It is a victory that is so hollow it echoes. 14 million lives paid against that spiritual debt for literally nothing.
Nothing at all.
Which really brings this whole deep dive back to you, the listener. After exploring this horrific lore, all this trauma, the sensory deprivation, the nuclear devastation of their homeworld, and the sheer pointlessness of Rax, why do these tragic soldiers remain one of the most universally beloved factions to learn about and to collect?
It's true. They are wildly popular.
Because people absolutely love them. They have these incredible tabletop models like the iconic Death Riders charging into battle on chemically mutated horses and massive, beautiful resin artillery kits.
The appeal is definitely multifaceted. On a tabletop level, there is a very distinct, grim satisfaction in commanding an army that visually looks like it crawled out of a nightmare version of history, but also plays exactly like its lore.
How so?
Well, when you play other armies and lose a squad, it feels like a tactical error. You messed up.
Right.
When you lose a squad of Krieg infantry in a game, it doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels narratively accurate. You are playing out that unrelenting attrition. You are commanding the spreadsheet.
So what does this all mean? When we look past the cool factor, past the greatcoats and the gas masks, we realize that the Death Korps shouldn't be inspiring. They are a warning.
A huge warning.
They are a terrifying look at a society built entirely around suffering, guilt, and blind obedience. But underneath those cold circular lenses, we recognize humanity pushed to its absolute breaking limits.
Yeah.
There are people who survived a nuclear nightmare only to lose their souls in the process of surviving. They aren't fearless because they are brave. They are fearless because they've been taught they have absolutely nothing left to lose.
It's the ultimate tragedy of their existence. They have weaponized their own despair, turning their trauma into the only thing the universe values them for.
And that leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to mull over today, something to think about long after this deep dive ends. If a society can be perfectly engineered to feel no fear, but they achieve that by entirely erasing personal identity and all self-worth, does the very concept of courage cease to exist for them? Can you actually be truly brave if you have been fundamentally programmed to not value your own survival?